So let's say you're energy rich, but time poor. What happens when you're energy rich and time poor is that you still get stuff done. In fact, you get more done in hours than many do in days or weeks. And that's because the way you show up in that time, however short it is, but the way you show up and the effort you put into that time is far greater than the majority because you are high on energy. And this is why energy management beats time management. Yes, time management is important, but you've got to have the energy first.
Welcome back to the You Can Too podcast. On today's show, we have international keynote speaker, best-selling author of Energize, and award-winning coach. We have Simon Alexander Ong on the show. Simon, I'm so grateful for your time, and I want to dive straight into it because I know that your journey is an exciting one, to say the least. And what I mean by that is, I know that when you were younger, you were one of the 6 or 7 only Chinese students in your school. And I'm curious for you, through that time, what was your internal narrative, and how did that shape who you became?
It felt strange at the time being part of a minority, but there were some positive and negative stereotypes that came with that. One of the negative stereotypes was that we were seen as a demographic to be hardworking. We got our work done. We strive to be best in class. But the downside of that, we also became a source for helping everyone else. And so they saw us as Asians, if you will, as the source to lean into in order to do well at school, in order to do well in their homework. The positive side, which is quite funny actually, is at the time I was going to school, this was a period of time where Bruce Lee films were very popular. So people would rent out videos and watch Bruce Lee films on television. And so what happened is that I had this mistaken belief by other people that I knew martial arts. And so with that sort of room and understanding going around school, it meant that I was immune to a lot of the bullying. Because people are thinking in their head, why would I want to mess with Simon? Because I'm sure he must know martial arts. And so there were these stereotypes that played in my favor and some against me. But I never really saw it as a disadvantage. I embraced the fact that I was different. I think it's tough to do when you are so tempted to conform to what people like and what is popular. But I saw it as a bit of an advantage.
Yeah, I think we have to be able to see it as an unfair advantage, regardless of what your experience is, and that's definitely something that we fall in alignment on, is being able to change the frame that we see life through, and being able to understand that. I know that when you went to university, you failed your second year, turned into a 3-year degree, and you had this path that was almost carved out for what was supposed to be your dream, or what was the life that you were supposed to live. How has that shifted over time? Obviously, you're doing something that fulfills you now, but throughout that time, what was that like, being able to shift out of that? Because I know that must have been a difficult shift.
Yeah, it was tough. I think that as humans, we love comfort. We love predictability. We love being in control.
Mhm.
So when you have visibility as to what tomorrow holds, or next week, or the next quarter, you can kind of plan for things. You know what's coming up, and that gives you some level of comfort. But when you start going onto a different path, a path that you've never been on before, no one in your family has been on, it's tough because you are learning on the job. You're kind of learning as things progress. And there is uncertainty that comes with it. You don't know if it's going to work out. You don't know if this is the right path, if this is your true purpose. But what I learned changing from the world of corporate to entrepreneurship, failing my year at university, even today having to adapt in different ways to a rapidly changing world, is that you have to become, over time, comfortable with the uncomfortable, to find joy in the fact that actually when everything is unknown, anything is possible. Because with a blank slate, with a blank canvas, you have this ability to mold and sculpt your future in very creative ways. But it's something I didn't know at the time. I just knew that I did not find my career in finance fulfilling. I initially went into it because I felt that was the path to success, and that was the path that would make me the most money. But very quickly, and I think especially as a result of the financial crisis, it made me question that belief, and it made me think about what I wanted to do longer term and what I wanted to be known for. And so, really doing the inner work of getting to know me at a deep level. Something I say to clients and audiences is that you cannot have self-development without self-awareness. So I went through this process where I deepened my self-awareness. And what I took from that is that I had to start taking more risks. I had to start making decisions that would be aligned to the future I wanted to create. And so when the pain of staying where I was greater than the pain of change, that was what lit a fire under my belly and made me think and act bolder.
Yeah, we both got into coaching in a weird way, not really an expected way. It was kind of like things happened. Like I got into coaching when COVID happened, so it was like I realized that the my job in retail was definitely not the path that I wanted to go
Mm,
down. And I didn't know what that looked like. But you talk about the selling to others is the second sale, but the first sale is selling to
mm.
yourself. And I love that perspective because if you don't believe that you can help others, or if you don't believe that you can help yourself, well, then your behavior is going to reflect that, right? So talk about that self-awareness process. What was it that you uncovered and how did you really sell yourself to yourself?
Sure. So the self-awareness process began with two questions. The first question was, what did success mean to me? And the second was, what impact did I want to have in the world? Now, they sound simple questions, but they're actually very deep questions. And you may not answer it straight away in the way you like, but for me, it was something I wanted to keep coming back to. The first question, what did success mean to me, is an important one because so many of us are running someone else's race. We're living up to someone else's definition of success. So when you begin to understand and have clarity on what your definition of success is, you begin to awaken one of the greatest sources of energy that there is. The second question, what impact do you want to have in the world, leans into a belief of mine that our value is determined by how much more we have given to the world than we have taken from it. And impact leans a lot into legacy. That is what people remember when we pass from this world. People won't remember all the status symbols you held, such as the money you earned, the titles you held, the companies you worked for, how long you worked for. What they remember is the impact that you had on the lives of other people. So that got me reflecting on my life as a whole. And when I began to have clarity as to what my end point was, what I had to begin doing was taking small steps forward, because those small steps would give me the belief that I had what it took to make that future reality. So that's what helped me to begin selling me to me and believing the value I had to offer the world. Is I had to start showing myself some evidence that this could be possible. This could be possible because if I just told myself that I'm all of these things and I believe I can do all of it, but with no evidence, it is delusional. So you need to balance that belief with evidence that the actions and the choices you're making today is going to contribute to a better tomorrow.
Absolutely. I love it. The confidence comes from competence. And if we don't believe something, our behavior is going to reflect it and it's going to reinforce why we shouldn't move forward. And I think it's so
Mm,
powerful. Those questions are very powerful as well. And the thing is, they're simple, but rarely do we ask those questions. And so we don't get the answers. And I think
mm.
journaling and asking questions is so it's so important because the vision is something that I think a lot of people especially, and I'm curious for you, your perspective on vision and how it relates to energy, because a lot of people, if they've never been somewhere, how can they have a vision on how to get there or even where they want to go? So, how does energy relate to vision, and how important really is it?
Sure. So when I think about energy in this way, when I think about motivation and vision,
Hmm.
you have a push and a pull charge. Now, when we start New Year's resolutions, often the source of energy that we create is a push force. So, for example, when you begin a new year, some people might say, "I want to get fitter this year." So you sign yourself up to the gym, or you start changing aspects of your diet, and you start increasing the level of self-care that you make time for. The issue with a push force when it comes to energy is it only lasts so long,
Hmm.
because what's happening is that you're constantly having to push yourself forwards. getting up early in the morning, going to a gym class, uh, buying healthy food, making the time to learn how to cook food. And that can exhaust your mental capacity. But when you work from a place of vision, which, as Stephen Covey would say, beginning with the end in mind, what happens is that actually you create what I call a pull sort of energy. So a push energy requires a lot of effort, whereas a pull energy doesn't require a lot of effort. So to give you an example, when you book a holiday and the flight that you need to catch requires you to wake up at 3 in the morning, you do it. You don't complain about waking up 3 because you're going to make that flight. You're going to go to somewhere exotic and you're going to enjoy your holidays. Because what's happening is that vision of being on holiday, that vision of being somewhere sunny creates a pull factor, which means it becomes effortless to do the steps required to make that vision a reality. And so this is why vision is so important, because when you have a pull factor, you just naturally wake up in the morning inspired by a world of possibility. But when you rely on a push force, what happens is that it can be exhausting because you're constantly having to push yourself forward each day and you're working against very powerful forces stopping you from making progress. So for me, this is why vision is so important. It's understanding how you will know that you have arrived at where you want to be, that you are experiencing the success you want to experience, and you are having the impact in the world that you want to have. And when you have that clarity, the next step is to write it down. Write it down, picture it, feel it, emotionalize it, and that's how that pull force is created. So that's why I think vision is so important. Uh, we all know what we don't want, but very few of us know what it is exactly we do want. And we have to start somewhere. And as you put yourself out there, you speak to people, you read books, you go to seminars, you listen to podcasts. What happens is that begins to feed your brain as to what it is you might want to explore that will help you get to that vision.
So true. It's so true. That perspective, attracting versus chasing, is such
Mm,
a paradigm shift when you're able to really actualize that in your life, and
mm,
you see it. Like people get to the end of their day feeling full of work, but they don't really feel fulfilled. And
mm,
there's a massive difference between it. You ask that question. There's another question you ask your clients often is, how will I know that today was a success at the end of the
mm,
day? And that's such a powerful question. And you talk a lot about journaling. Is there any other questions that come up for you that you constantly, whether it's asking yourself or clients?
mm. Well, often the challenge when I work with clients is that deep down, and I'm sure those of you listening will feel this, is that deep down we know what the next step is. We know what we must do. But for whatever reason, we procrastinate or we overthink the next step. So either we don't take it, or it takes us so long to take that next step that our peers are zooming ahead. And so, a question that I often ask as a way of making that gap smaller between idea and execution is this: how much longer will you continue doing what you are comfortable doing and avoid what you are capable of doing? So, how much longer will you continue doing what you are comfortable doing to avoid what you're capable of doing? Because deep down, we have capacity, we have the ability to do great things. But what stops us are those things called self doubt and fear. And then we overthink and overanalyze that we end up being in the same place we were years ago. And so we're not really progressing, but we're moving sideways. But once we begin to live with intention, once we collapse that gap between idea and execution and have a bias towards action, what happens is you create this feeling of momentum. And that feeling of momentum creates more energy.
It's so true. It's so true. That's a commonality with every single person I've spoken to is that they have a bias towards action. They feel compelled to do
Mm,
something. They don't think about the detriment of what happens if I fail, but they think of the detriment of not taking action. And that's a question I ask clients so often
mm,
is, what happens if you don't take action? Like, where are you going to be in 10 years from now if you never move towards where you really want to go? And I'd love to dive into your story with that, because a lot of people are going to use their external circumstances as an excuse to stay comfortable in where they're at. You lost your mom when you were
Mm.
17, you lost your grandfather, the financial crisis happened. You could have every single
Yeah.
excuse in the world to stay comfortable in where you are and find another job in banking or whatever that looks like for you. How were you
Mm.
able to, and were you able to recognize that those things were happening for you at the time, or did that just come with time?
I think in the moment, as with any unexpected event in life,
Mhm.
it can be difficult to see things any other way. So when I lost my mum at 17, I think that for me was the first big event that jarred me,
Yeah.
because when you're 17 years old, you expect maybe your grandparents or your great grandparents to be the first to pass, but not your direct mum or dad, someone in your direct family. So when that happened, it it took me a while to process the event, uh, because there was no resources for mental health at the time. Today there's a lot. It's talked about a lot more, but it took me a while to process that. But in order to move forward, I began to see it in the more positive light. I
Yeah.
began to look for the lessons, uh, and I wanted to find meaning in how I could make my mum proud as to the choices I would make after this, and what I could achieve in my lifetime.
Yeah. And you got into coaching not too long after that. I know that you went to a couple events and stuff like that. Like, what was it within you that called you to start coaching, to write a book by the best publisher in the
Hmm.
world, and really just transform your life in seemingly not a short amount of time, but with a lot of energy and a lot of intention?
Yeah, so when I decided I wanted to do something different and I wanted to work for myself, at the time I didn't know what that was. So I would spend my weekends and evenings going out and exploring the world of business and entrepreneurship, thinking, well, what could I do? What could I bring value to? And I remember there was this advert that came up on my feed for a 2-day event in London, which was teaching people about the skills of coaching and how you could use that to start your own business and impact other people's lives. Now, before I went to this event, I always enjoyed helping other people and encouraging them through times of challenge. But for me, I always thought that was being a good friend. As a good friend, you want to support him or her, and you want to help them navigate life's tough situations.
Mm.
But I didn't realize until I went to this event that I could actually monetize that skill and create a source of income around something that I would find fulfilling. So I went there with an open mind, and at the end of these 2 days, I came out and I said to myself, I need to get onto this. I need to sign myself up to this, because I want to learn how to use coaching as a skill to impact other people's lives. So within a few weeks, I signed up to take on 3 courses with this provider, and a few years later, I qualified, and then I took that experience and the learnings I had, and decided to start building a side business alongside my full time job to just see where it could go. Uh, and then in 2016, I made the decision to exit employment and begin working for myself. So, as you said, not a huge amount of time, but things started moving very quick once I focused on working for myself.
Yeah, and I asked that question because I think for a lot of people, they think it just happens, or something
Mm,
comes into their life that presents an opportunity, and things just fall into place. But what I found with
mm,
so many people I've spoken to is that they create the opportunities for themselves, and that's why I wanted to dive into that. And even you, with your daughter, like after that, the
mm,
amount of effort that you had to put in to be able to sustain that, and while writing a
yeah.
book and everything in between, how did were you able to manage your energy throughout that
Mm.
time? Because I could not imagine that experience, just learning about it.
Yeah, no, it was tough, James. When you are writing a book with deadlines and you've just become a father and nobody can come to your home, you can't go anywhere outside because everywhere is locked down,
Yeah.
and You also have to keep your business afloat, where lots of businesses were struggling during the COVID pandemic.
Mhm.
Uh, it, it is not easy, but I think that life throws us challenges, not in a bad way, in a good way, because when life throws you challenges, it's a test. It's a test to see how you would deal with it. And if you deal with it in a healthy and positive way, the reward is you become a far stronger person, a far more resilient person than the person that went in before the challenge. You come out of the challenge a stronger, more capable individual. And that's why when I survived that period, those months where lots of things were unknown, I think it made me a stronger person who was more capable of taking on more of what the world would throw my way. And when you know you have that resilience, when you know you have the ability to take on the world and to take on the challenges and changes that will inevitably occur, that gives you confidence. That gives you greater belief in yourself. And that ownership of your future is what helps you sculpt the vision into reality.
Again, I'm going to keep saying it's so true because I love this perspective that you take. I know that you talk about energy as a life force, and I'd love for you
Mm,
to dive into what you see energy as and how we could take advantage of it. Because in that experience, like you doing that, taking every single hour that you could between
mm,
taking care of your daughter and focusing on clients and then writing the book, like I don't think people understand how much mental energy, let alone
mm,
taking care of client calls take into
yeah.
account, but just actually writing. I could not imagine that. I know you talk about four
Mm.
dimensions of energy. Do you mind breaking those down?
Sure. So the way I see energy is through four dimensions. We have physical energy, mental energy, emotional energy, and spiritual energy. Now, a lot of us will only focus on physical energy. So what happens is when you feel exhausted, you might say, I need to get more rest. I need to sleep earlier. I need to go outside in nature. I need to move my body or I need to change my diet. Now, for a lot of us, that's the extent of what we address when it comes to managing our energy.
Yeah.
But we've also got to look at the areas of mental, emotional, and spiritual. So, mental energy is about your mindset, it's about your ability to focus in an ocean of distraction, and also the ability to tap into your creative energy, which we all have, which we were born with, but we end up suppressing as we get older. Emotional energy is all about the relationship we have with ourselves and with other people, and also how we respond to things that are outside of our control. It's managing our emotional state. You might also call this emotional strength or emotional intelligence. And
Mhm.
spiritual energy is all about meaning and purpose. Are you doing the things that make you feel alive? Are you doing the things that allow you to express your innate gifts and talents? Or are you doing work that makes you feel trapped in someone else's body, that makes you feel like you're not expressing who you are and what you are capable of? So when you are high on spiritual energy, that's where you experience states of flow. But when you are low on spiritual energy, that's where you experience tension inside of your body, because that's the body's way of telling you, hey, you're not doing the right thing. We're frustrated because we just can't express who we are on this. We're limited here. We've got so many constraints that I'm not living my life in the way I want. And so once we begin addressing these four dimensions, what happens is naturally we start to feel more energized. And the fact is we get more energy by doing things that energize us. So sometimes when people look at my calendar or they look at the things I get involved in and say, wow, Simon, you're doing a lot. But the irony here is that the things I'm doing, I love. They're fulfilling. They get me out of bed in the morning. So when you do those things that light you up, guess what? You create more energy. You create more energy. And with that extra capacity of energy, that's what gives you the ability to do more. That's what gives you the ability to do what most can't or won't.
This podcast is kindly brought to you by Magic Mind. Now, if you're anything like me, you love coffee, but you hate the jitters that it gives you in that 2 p.m. slump in the afternoon when you still have a lot of day left, but you're not able to be focused throughout that time. And this is why I love Magic Mind. I've been taking it with my morning coffee. It's a small productivity shot that I absolutely love. It's with matcha, which takes longer to release in your body. So instead of feeling slumped at 2 p.m., you actually have that intentional focus and it reduces stress. So I take it with my morning coffee. It helps me drink less coffee, but actually feel focused and not wired throughout the day, which is so impactful because if you're a podcaster or you're taking calls or you're just in general, you need to be focused and have that mental energy. It's been something that's really helpful for me. I've been using it for a few weeks, and I guarantee that you will like it. So if you're anything like me and you want to feel focused but not wired, you can go to magicmind.com/youcan2 for 56% off. Yes, 56% off your first subscription. And for your first one-time payment, you can get 20% off, which is insane to say the least, because they have a 100% money back guarantee with no questions asked. Instead of waiting 3 to 5 days for that money back, they'll refund you in 3 to 4 hours because they believe in it, and I believe in it so much. So that's magicmind.com/youcan2 for up to 56% off your first subscription. And if you already use Magic Mind, you can get a discount off your next subscription payment as well. So it's magicmind.com/youcan2. Try it for a few weeks, see if you like it. I bet you that you will, and you will feel a lot more intentional with your day instead of just so wired and really just exhausted by the end of the day. Back to the episode. Absolutely. You talk about that a lot of people, it's not that they're doing too much, but they're running someone else's race, and that's why they get
Mm.
burnt out a lot. And I could not be more in alignment with that. I talk about this so much when I hop off client calls or when I hop off a podcast. The amount of energy that I get is more than when I drink my morning coffee. It's absurd, and you really can't replicate it with anything else other than doing things that really make you feel in alignment. Out of those four dimensions, from the people, either the keynotes that you've done or the
Mhm.
clients that you've worked with, is there any commonalities that you find in people that whether they neglect that type of energy or they struggle in it?
I would say it's two things that come out from keynotes and conversations I've had. The first thing is that the dimension you want to start with is physical energy.
Mhm.
The dimension you want to start with is physical energy, because without your health, you can't do much. One of the things I say in my book is that to the healthy person, you will have, the healthy person will have lots of hopes, wishes, and dreams,
Mhm.
but the sick have only one, just to be healthy. And so once you begin to prioritize your physical energy, you give yourself the foundation to do all the other things you want to do in life. The area I would say people find the most challenging is emotional energy.
Hmm.
Now, that's because we often don't make time just to explore our thoughts. We think that productivity is doing. So unless I'm doing something, unless I'm busy, I'm not productive. But actually, the greatest breakthroughs we've had in history have come not from sitting in front of a screen or being locked away in a study, but it has come from being disconnected, from taking ourselves away from our work and having periods of intentional rest, of disconnecting. So whether it's Thomas Edison who went fishing with no bait, so no one, not even the fish, would disturb him, but that would give him moments of clarity and insight. Or to Isaac Newton, who was sitting under a tree and the apple fell on his head and he had the insight of gravity. These breakthroughs didn't happen just sitting staring in front of books or screens. They happen by understanding that we have a rhythm. We have a rhythm that means in order to be productive, we have to have periods in our day where we're doing deep work, but also periods in our day where we have intentional rest, intentional breaks. And so if you don't have that built in, you don't really get to understand and get clear as to how to manage your emotions. What happens is you end up being reactive. If you have little sleep, you're not spending time alone, you're not disconnecting. Guess what? You just become reactive. And a lot of the world now, as you can see in politics and government and countries in general, we're going through a scary period of time where the world is very divisive. And part of me believes the reason we're in a divisive world at the moment is because we're not really taking the time to understand our emotional state. We're not really taking the time to understand why we are feeling a certain way. So once we do the inner work to know why we're feeling certain emotions and how to address them, but also how to deal with them in other people, what happens is that we begin to feel more connected, not just to ourselves, but also more connected to other people.
Yeah, yeah. One of my first mentors told me that we'll make all the meetings with other people that we want, but when's the
Mm,
last time you made a meeting with yourself? And
yeah.
that hit me like a ton of bricks because I realized I hadn't been making time for my connection with myself. And I think
Mm,
that's where a lot of our problems in this world come from, is that we are disconnected from ourselves. And so we don't know
mm,
what we want. We don't know what's the hurdle that's standing in the way from us moving forward. Like there's
mm,
so much that comes from being with yourself. And you have a lot of quotes on silence having so much more.
Mm.
But I'd love for you to dive into energy audits, because that's kind of like moving into that. I think energy audits
Yeah,
is something that's really powerful, because again, it's just like what you said right there. Like, a lot of us are just thinking that more work equals more results, but it just doesn't work that way.
yeah, absolutely not. And that's why there's a couple of things I do with new clients. So one of them is doing an energy audit. So
Mhm.
it's getting them to sit down and reflect on some questions. So I asked them, for example, on a scale of 0 to 10, how much energy do you feel you have at the moment? And questions such as, how would you rate your sleep quality? How would you rate your diet? How would you rate your uh, satisfaction at work? How would you rate your experience of giving back to the world? And so we look at a series of 8 to 12 factors. And whatever the scores that come out at the end are, tend to be quite revealing.
Mm.
So the first thing I'd say is, which of these score 8 or higher, and which of these score lower than 4. And then we go into why. Why did this area get a 4 lower? Why did this area get an 8 or higher? And that tends to reveal a lot. It tends to reveal where they're spending their time and energy, and what's draining them and what's energizing them. And I think just having an idea of where you stand right now uh, gives you areas to address. So you can kind of go forward thinking, well, this area clearly needs more attention. What am I going to do to increase that by just one score? So I start to improve these areas of my energy. So that's what I do in an energy audit. But it's also important when I work with clients to understand what is meaningful for them. So this is tapping to the vision side of it, but also what their challenges are. Because most of us know what we want out of life. We sit down with you goals for ourselves and we say, if I could have anything in the world, then this is what I want. But actually, we're not addressing the challenges. So the challenges are there. And we're using those challenges as excuses for not taking action.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I find with a lot of my friends that are coaches, we all see similarities within our clients. And it's that at the end of the day,
Mm,
they know what they need to do, but they get in their own way from doing it. And
yeah.
I think the energy audit, like you say, there is like there's multiple things that if they're not aware of, like there's no self-development without self-awareness, as you spoke
Mm.
about earlier. Is there anything that you've noticed within clients that you've worked with that they are unaware of, that is getting in their own way from making progress?
I think the most common thing I've seen is a lack of perspective.
Mm.
When we experience an event or we have a certain thought about the next step or project, we tend to let that thought dominate without understanding there can be different ways to interpret it.
Yeah.
And so, what I like doing is just creating a space for clients to see things through different perspectives. So, a question as simple as, what else could that mean, allows us to explore alternative steps and paths to achieve the same outcome, but through trying something different. And this can get people out of their head and into a creative mode. And when you start coming from a place of creativity, for me, it becomes fun. And when any process or habit is fun, productivity becomes easy.
Yeah, I'm gonna steal that question from you, because that's one I love. I gotta mark that, because one thing that I always think about is that we ascribe meaning to our experiences and to things that happen to us,
Mm.
but we don't recognize that we have the ability to change that meaning. And that
Yeah.
question in itself is opening up your, like you said, your creative part of your mind that recognizes that there's another opportunity here. And I think it's our short sightedness that corrupts our ability to change the meaning, because it's like your mom. I
Mm.
lost a lot of family growing up as well. My father passed away when I was 6 years old, so I couldn't imagine at
Mm.
17 the impact that would have. But you're able to recognize that it really is happening for you if you're
Yeah.
able to understand that you have the ability to change the meaning. I want to dive deeper into energy, because I think it's something that a lot of people, without really even knowing it, a lot of people are working at like a 60% of what they really could be working at. And it's just a commonality within a lot of people. What do you find
Mm.
there are the commonalities that drain people's energy?
It's I think the commonality to drain people's energy is simply doing things that you just don't want to do.
Mm,
So we find it hard to say no to requests or demands on our time.
mhm,
So we say yes. It's easy to say yes. Yes, I'll do this. Yes, I'll do that. But not knowing how to protect our energy. for the things that matter mean that we end up doing all the other stuff, but the very thing we know we must do in order to get to that next level. So what we have to be aware of is actually, is this thing that I've been asked to do going to help me move forward, or is it going to stop me moving forward? And how can I say no in a way that is respectful and appreciative of the fact that I was given the opportunity to say yes or no? Uh, and so learning that for me and also for my clients has allowed them to basically have oxygen for the tasks and the things that matter most. So they have the capacity and the space to think what would be the most productive next step, rather than just be caught in this busyness trap. And I think actually when I talk about busyness, I think that being busy is an excuse really. We seek more things to do to add to our to-do list to feel like we're going somewhere, but in fact we're busy avoiding what we know we've got to do. And so when somebody says, "Hey, you told me you were going to do this last month or last week, why haven't you done it?" I was busy. I had all of these things to do. I was busy. I mean, the reality is, if it was important enough, you would have made time for it. But we cram our to-do list with more and more and more things to do, because then we feel like we're productive because we're in doing mode, but we're not actually doing the things that are actually helpful. So we end up running in circles, not moving anywhere, but yet thinking we are. And I think a lot of people are experiencing that today.
Couldn't be more accurate, man. You could not be more accurate. It's we busyness has become a status symbol of some sort. Like if I'm
Mm,
the first thing that you when you speak to someone, how are you? Oh, I've been busy. That's the first thing that we think,
mm,
because it makes us feel important. It makes us feel like we're moving towards something, even if that being busy means we're focusing on, like you just said, it's the things that aren't really moving the needle. We're being
mm,
busy doing the things that make us feel productive, but aren't really actually moving the needle. And I think
mm,
it's very important, and that's why I think the difference between time management and energy management is so different. Why is it that we should
mm.
focus on management versus time management? Because I think that's a big paradigm shift.
Yeah, so here's a simple reason why. Let's say you are time rich but energy poor.
Mm,
Now, what happens is that when you're time rich and energy poor, you might have a whole day free in your calendar. But if your energy is low, you just have no energy, you have an energy poverty, then you're going to procrastinate. You're going to waste that time you've got. That's why I have friends who work in a full-time job who are employed by a company, and they might say, "Oh, I'm going to take a day off work tomorrow, just because I feel like I need some space." So they'll take a day off work, but what actually happens?
mhm,
Now, what actually happens in many cases is they'll wake up late, they'll have a nice line because they've got a day off work, they'll have breakfast at the time they would normally have lunch, they end up watching television or scrolling through social media or watching YouTube videos, and before they know it, it's coming to the end of that 3 day they had off. And they're like, damn, I could have got so much more done. Where did the time go? So that's often the result when you are time rich and energy poor. However, if we flip it, so let's say you're energy rich but time poor. What happens when you're energy rich and time poor is that you still get stuff done. In fact, you get more done in hours than many do in days or weeks. And that's because the way you show up in that time, however short it is, but the way you show up and the effort you put into that time is far greater than the majority, because you are high on energy. And this is why energy management beats time management. Yes, time management is important, but you've got to have the energy first. There's no point managing your time and saying, "Hey, when it gets to 4 o'clock, I'm going to go for a workout," if by 4 o'clock your energy is crashing. It's just not going to happen. In fact, you probably say, "I'll go tomorrow. I'll go tomorrow to the gym because I just don't feel like it now." So without the energy part of the equation, it doesn't matter how good you manage your time, because it is not sustainable. So energy management then feeds into time management, but it always starts with energy.
absolutely, absolutely. The time that you have doesn't matter if you don't have the energy to do the things when you have the time at the end of the day, right? Like
Mm,
that
mm.
is as simple as it can be, but we always think of, I'm so busy, I need to figure out how to manage my time, but really you need to manage your energy, and that's so important. You talked about a
Yeah.
few things that
We
are go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say we overcomplicate it. We overcomplicate it. The fact is, well, simple question: what periods of the day are you higher on energy? What periods of the day are you lower on energy? And how can you build your day around that? That's it. I mean, it's like uh, when someone says, "Okay, I want to get healthier," but the easiest thing to do is put your trainers on, go outside and run, go to your local gym, just start working out, go to a class. But a lot of us overcomplicate it. We think, well, I need to research the best smartwatch to wear that will track my fitness. I need to research the best trainers to buy. I need to research the best class to go to. I mean, think of all that time research that you could just put into going and moving your body. So I think we like to overcomplicate it, but the answer in many cases is very simple.
Absolutely. We want to overcomplicate it so it justifies why we're not moving towards it, right? And that it is so true. Like we want to make it more difficult than it needs to be so that we can stay where we are and stay in our
Mm,
comfort zone. And at the end of the day, that really is as simple as it can be. And that's why coaching's so powerful because you have that accountability to show up, right? You
mm,
you know what you need to do. We all know what we need to do. Sometimes we need a little bit of strategy involved, but for the
mm,
most part, we know what we need to do. We just need the accountability and perspective shift that we spoke about earlier
mm,
to just show up enough times to actually make it happen. And I think it's so
mm,
important to take that perspective. There's a quote that you've said a few times. We're living in the feeling of our thinking. And the
mm.
way that you frame it is our thoughts are colors on a palette. I'd love for you to dive through that because I love that perspective. I haven't heard it that way.
Yeah, sure. So what I mean by the fact that we're living the feeling of our thinking moment to moment is that it's our thoughts that create our reality.
Mm.
So we actually don't live in a unified reality. We live in a very customized reality. So when you wake up in the morning and you see the news, you read the papers, you see what's going on in the world, the way you interpret the information that you read and see will be very different to the way your parent, your friend, or your colleague interprets it. And that's what creates our reality. We live in a thought generated reality. Now, that also gives us a very cool superpower, which is the fact that at any given moment, we can choose one thought over another. We can choose one thought over another and thereby change the reality that we're in. Now, for a lot of us, and this connects with the second part that you touched on about colors on the palette, is that once we begin taking back control over our reality, we start to understand that we are the one holding the paintbrush. We are the one holding the paintbrush, but too often we give up control of that paintbrush to someone else. So when you are in control of that paintbrush, you get to choose the colors on the palette that you paint your canvas with. Now you can choose bright, vivid, positive colors, or you can choose dull, negative, boring colors. It's entirely up to you. And that's the power we have. You can choose which colors you paint your reality with, and that then creates the experience of your life and therefore the emotions you have from that. You get to decide. The fact is, many of us are giving up that control to someone else.
I love it. I haven't heard it that way, but it's going back to the meaning that we give things and being able to understand that we
Mm,
have such a big impact. It's like two people can go see a movie and have two completely different experiences for that
yeah.
exact reason, right? Like when none of us are living in the same reality, we're all living through the lens that we see it through. We're projecting into the
Mm,
world, and I think it's again, it's so powerful. And you say words carry energy. I love this because there's a
mm,
difference between being interested and being committed, and I love that perspective.
yeah.
I've definitely noticed it when I hired my first coach. I fully committed to myself like I'd never commit to before, and I didn't realize that I was just interested in a lot of things until I actually fully committed to it. And I think that that's
Mm,
a massive perspective that we have to take in most things in life. Again, it goes back to we want to make it
yeah.
difficult because we don't believe that it can be easy or simple, but it really is.
Mm.
I want to know, how do we fully commit to things and actually commit instead of just being interested without falling into burnout? Because obviously there's a difference between intensity and consistency, and I'd love for you to break down the difference.
So first of all, when you mention the words intensity and consistency, one of the things I enjoy teaching people about is that consistency always beats intensity, always. Because what happens is that if you go intense short term, it's unsustainable and you will burn out. But if you can be consistent at a habit or a skill, over time, that skill or that habit compounds. The more consistent you are, the quicker that skill compounds. And that's why we often talk about the fact that there is no such thing as overnight success. It's more about being an over time success.
Mhm.
And that's because those who are the most consistent succeed over time. It's unsexy. It's not a sexy secret to success.
Yeah.
But the fact is, consistency is important. Even Denzel Washington said when he received an award for his performance in the film Fences, he said, without commitment, you will never begin. More importantly, without consistency, you will never finish. And so this aspect of consistency is very important if you want to succeed in the long term. Now, the step before that is commitment.
Mhm.
And you have to ask yourself, when you write down your goals, when you write down your vision, when you tell other people what you want to get out of life, are you committed to that reality manifesting? Are you committed? Because the thing is, your actions tells the world whether you're committed or not. So if you want to evaluate your level of commitment, just look at your actions and your choices. Look at the last year, look at the last month, look at the last week. Do your choices and actions reflect somebody who is committed or somebody who is interested? And what must happen for you to move forward with a high level of commitment? Because when you move forward with a high level of commitment, your language changes. Now, you can go and speak to friends of yours or those in the world of business, and you can tell immediately who is committed and who is interested just by the language they use, just by the way they express something. When somebody says to you in 2024, I am going to do this, I will do this, I must make this happen, that is the language of commitment. Because when you come from a place of commitment, you immediately jump in your mind to a place of action. You're thinking how and who. How can I move forward? Who do I need to speak to? And being in that place of action is key to getting a lot of stuff done.
Absolutely. That is the one thing that I love the most when I hop on a client call and I call a client out on the wordage that they're using and immediately say that's the
Mm.
reason right there is the wording that we use. It does carry energy, and I loved reading that because
Yeah.
it's more powerful than we could even imagine. And I do it almost to
Mm.
a negative extent at this point, where every time I have a conversation with someone, I'm going to call them out on the words that they're using, because a lot of the time we're using limiting language without even really being conscious of
Mm.
it. And you've worked with a lot of celebrities and a lot of just amazing people that are working at the highest levels.
Mm.
What are the commonalities that sets some that succeed towards those that take maybe a little bit longer to manifest the reality, um, to actually help them succeed? What are the commonalities that you find?
I think one of the commonalities with people who have achieved a great deal of success in their life, whether it's personal or professional,
Mhm.
is acting bold. Doing things that most people won't. Uh, so a lot of the time, we fear doing things, uh, but with the people I've worked with, they see it as a game. They see the journey as one big game. So when we see it as a game, it becomes fun because just like a video game, you're thinking, well, what do I need to do to move to the next level? What new skills do I need to develop in my character to take on the next big challenge? So when you see it as a game, you are constantly looking at putting yourself out there in different ways. You're looking at experimenting with the ideas you have. You're looking at reaching out to people, but you're not attached to the outcome because you simply see it as, hey, the more people I reach out to, uh, the more yeses there will be. Even if I have to reach out to 100 people and only 10 reply, that's 10 more than I would have had otherwise. And so you're not attached to the outcome of these things. You just focus on the process. And so I think that commonality is finding joy in the process, acting bold, and doing things that most people won't.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The boldness trumps intelligence, I feel. At least from
Mm.
what I found from a lot of people I've spoken to, the people that take on more than they can handle and act anyways, regardless if they feel ready for it, usually succeed over those that think too much and wait too long, even
Mm.
if they're more intelligent. And I think that's another hard truth that a lot of people don't really want to
Yeah.
take in. But you talk the difference between success and fulfillment, and I love that perspective. I'd love for you to dive into it, because I find that a lot of people see people succeeding at an external level and don't see the
Mm.
behind the scenes, of course, the family, the everything that's going on.
Yeah.
That they define that as success, but it's really important to define what you see as success. So, what do you find the differences?
Yeah, definitely. So the difference between success and fulfillment is that, simply put, you can be successful in something you hate. doesn't mean you're fulfilled.
Yeah.
You might be successful, but you're not fulfilled. So when I was in finance, if I look at the measures of success by society, I was fairly successful. I got into a well-paying job in finance, and lots of people wanted to get a job in the financial industry. So I had a job that was seen as one with a good reputation, that paid well, with a good brand. And so on those measures of success, I would be deemed successful. But I didn't enjoy it. I was feeling unfulfilled. There would be moments in my day where when the day was slow, I would go to the toilet cubicle, lock myself in, and just close my eyes, putting my head on the side of the cubicle. And I would do that because I would be dreaming of this other life, dreaming of doing something outside of just going back to the desk and looking at a computer screen again, and then clocking out at 5 and then repeating the same day tomorrow and the day after. And so, yes, that was successful on the outside, but internally I was unfulfilled. So fulfillment is more about living true to who you are. In fact, Bronnie Ware, who wrote the book, The Top Regrets of the Dying, she said the number one regret was the fact that I wish I lived a life more true to myself than a life lived for others. And when you are living a life true to yourself, that is how you feel fulfilled. That is how you feel fulfilled. Because that ultimately is success. That is the true definition of success, is fulfillment. And that's why I think it's important to differentiate between the two. There's the definition of success that we're used to, that we're accustomed to. But again, you can be successful in something you hate. But when you're feeling fulfilled, that's what we're really after. We're looking for fulfillment because that's what makes life truly worth living.
Absolutely. And I think when you're in that, when you gain energy from things rather than being drained from them, right?
Mm.
When you jumped into coaching, did you recognize almost immediately that you had more energy than you had before?
Absolutely, because I think the difference between working in finance and doing coaching
Mhm.
is I could actually see and feel the impact of the work I was having. When I came out of a conversation, when I came out of a session, when I saw the feedback they would send me, I'm not going to lie, it felt good. It felt good when I read comments such as, Simon, that was a brilliant session. I've just come away with so much more clarity. Or I received a message from someone that said, I've just landed this new opportunity. Thank you so much for your help in this. That made me feel good.
Yeah.
And I don't think money can buy that. Money can't buy that. When you do something that impacts the life of someone else and you can see that person transformed, that's what we mean by service. The service you deliver to someone else's life, the impact you've delivered to someone's life, makes you feel good. And that gives you more energy. That gives you more energy to think, well, what else can I do? How else can I influence people's lives for the better? And so as I started seeing that from the coaching, I wanted to extend that into speaking, into writing, and into other mediums as a way to influence a far bigger audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to dive a little bit deeper into to that journey because when you had your daughter and then you started writing the book and then you had the coaching and you had so many different things going on, of course you're going to get energy from those things. So it's on the days that, you have a bunch of things going on, you still have that energy. But what do you do in the
Mm.
days when maybe you don't feel so energized, no matter if you're doing the things that bring you fulfillment?
Sure. And I did have a lot of those days where I didn't feel energized because the first 7 or 8 months, when the world went into lockdown, it was tough. I'm not going to lie, because when we gave birth to our daughter, we were expecting our families to come over to help with childcare, to give me some space to write, and to hit the deadlines I needed to hit with my publisher.
Mhm.
But of course, when lockdown was announced, both sides of the family couldn't fly over. They had to cancel their tickets, cancel their hotels, and we were stuck inside. A big part of my business is speaking, and overnight, all of my speaking got cancelled because there was no more possibility of holding in-person events. While every company in the world was grappling with how to transform into a remote company, how to have all of their employees working from home. So it took a few months before the speaking came back, as people realized this was going to be a lot longer than we first anticipated, and we would have to move speaking to a virtual platform. And so those few months were really tough. And there were even moments where I didn't know if I was going to finish the book. There were moments where I was saying to myself, I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to finish it because there's just so much going on right now. But I think what helped me deal with those moments where I was low on energy, where I was feeling a little exhausted, is the environment I had around me. Now, when I talk about my environment, it's the coaches I had, the mentors I had, the mastermind group I was in, my wife even. And so these people gave me the space to share what was on my mind, uh, to help me manage my mental state. Because I think that when you have people that will listen to you, people that will support you, it means you don't have to stay stuck up in your head. And that's where mental health issues are created. When you're stuck in here and you can't work your way through the thoughts that are going on in your head, it can make you feel a little depressed. But when you have people that are saying, hey, Simon, you look like you're going through a tough period right now. Do you want to share some of what's on your mind? For me, that's powerful. It's powerful to have a support network who care about your success and care about how you're feeling at any given moment.
Yeah, you need an external perspective, and I'm glad you brought up
Mm,
environment because that was something I wanted to dive into, how our environment affects our energy, and it is profound. I know that a lot of people, especially when COVID happened, their energy was depleted
mm,
because we're not surrounded by anybody, and it's
yeah.
really difficult to maintain a high energy if you're by yourself all the time. There's one last question I
Mm.
ask every guest, and encapsulates what I want to do with this podcast. My question to you is, what belief are you currently unlearning?
What belief am I currently unlearning? I think the main belief I'm currently unlearning is that I have to do certain steps in order to get to where I want to be. So just like getting a good job, you have to go to college, get good grades, go to a good university, and then land the job you want.
Mhm.
Often in the world of entrepreneurship, there's a lot of people that say, you've got to have a podcast, you've got to write a book, you've got to do this, you've got to do that in order to do all the other things you want to. Now, what I'm learning is that yes, some of those things are important, but I can also do it my way. And there's things that I can bring into my journey that will make me different from other people. And so it's just unlearning that there has to be certain things I have to tick off in order to get to where other people are. But actually, I can still get to where I want to be, but just embracing some of what makes me me.
Yeah, that's a big discrepancy is understanding what you want versus
Mm,
what you think, what other people want. That is so,
mm.
so powerful, Simon. Thank you so much for your time. Of course, all of your links will be in the show notes, but is there anywhere that you'd like to direct people?
I'm on all the major social platforms, but the two I use the most are LinkedIn. So you can just search Simon Alexander Ong, and Instagram. My handle's at Simon Alexander O. And if you have any questions on the back of this conversation with James, uh, don't feel afraid to drop me a DM. I love checking your questions, and I may not always be timely, but I will get back to you. And it is me, not anyone else in my team.